Nice to be here with all of you. Welcome in from the cold. I'm glad you got some dinner, some cookies. Love it. After dinner treats, maybe, or maybe not just your dinner.
No, I ate some other things.
Okay, all right. Hello, Carrie and Jim online there on Zoom. Nice to see you. So our goals tonight are to set a priorities framework and an order of operation for those priorities. I emailed you all the document ahead of time that had the priorities document there. Do you need something now? Yeah, okay, I emailed you all the priorities. Hi. Document that we'll be looking at tonight. I did not bring copies. I'm hoping you can access that. Or we'll just, voice over it. But so that's the first goal, to set the priorities framework and order of operations. The second goal is to understand the next steps on what's moving, the vacancy ordinance, the budget, and some state appeals, and to decide how to engage with the planning commission with regard to the development regs. So anything else that people need or thought was happening in this meeting? No? Okay. So let's first just look at the meeting minutes from January 6th and January 20th, which was a special meeting. Any questions or comments on those minutes?
I looked at them, they look fine.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the January 6th meeting minutes? So moved, second. Okay, all in favor? Oh, shoot. We need someone taking notes while Dan is not here. Would anyone be willing to do that? I literally cannot do it in a meeting at the same time. Okay, Lauren's gonna try. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so the meeting was called to order at 6 o'clock, and we had a motion from Alex to approve the January 6th, and Ben seconded. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Wait a minute, do we not have a form?
I think you do, right? It's 7 or 9.
It's 9.
Yeah.
9 for the committee, but a quorum is 4+1.
We're good.
Yeah.
We just got.
Yeah, we're good now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, great. Minutes approved. Are you okay with the minutes for January 6th? Okay, great. Moving on to the minutes for January 20th. Any questions or concerns in January 20th? Minutes? No. Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
Want to do this one, Ben, and I'll do the second?
So moved.
Second, Alex, all in favor? Aye. Okay, great. All right, the minutes have been approved. Let's see. So we are now moving on to public comment. Do you have any public comment?
I don't.
Okay.
No, thank you.
I don't see anyone online that is there for public comment. So moving past public comment, let me move to the next item, which is the city update. Matt.
Hi.
Thank you.
So a few projects that I'm working on. Country Club Road is kind of absorbing the office planning at the moment. We're working on 4 grants. 2 of them are for Country Club Road. One is a DR funded and one is a Department of Transportation grant called a Build Grant, which would allow us to build the roads, which would be great. Those are both due at the end of the month. We also, the city got a grant for $150,000 from the disaster relief funding to study the wastewater treatment plant engineering solution. They'd like us to revisit it, even though frankly it's absurd, but we're going to use the money, do a new engineering study, prove to them that Kurt is on top of it, and then they'll have to find more money to rebuild the road and make sure that the wastewater treatment plant is fine. And then the last one is I'm working with Alec City Parks and Kasha from the Rivers Vermont River Conservancy and others in the city on an economic development grant. But that's actually related to Country Club Road because the Parks Department spent $1 million on the site. So getting them happy and getting everyone involved on Country Club Road is a good way of making sure that the infrastructure there is ready for housing. So that's 4 grants. I heard at 5 o'clock today, after weeks of waiting, I heard from the owner of a parcel that is adjacent to the community college. And they are interested in developing that property. It's 12 acres. It's at the end of the city's water and sewer line. This is a interesting step forward. I had a meeting with the president of the community college. She is very interested in working with the city to figure out ways of providing affordable housing on their lot. And the country in the stump dump, it is contentious. Kurt doesn't want to give it up. And so we need to work with Kurt to find alternative sites for all the stuff that happens at the stump dump or has happened in the past. I talked to Eli at Regional Planning Authority, and she is ready to help the city figure out testing for environmental toxins and whatever. She's like, yes, we can do this, and we will find money to figure out how to remediate the site because there will be pollution there.
Man, I'm sorry, who said that?
Eli?
Eli.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I had a meeting with her a couple of weeks ago, and she was very enthusiastic about helping us figure out how to help the city make the stump dump into a housing site. So
Great.
that together, the private lot, the community college, and the stump dump are 48 acres, which eclipses the size of Country Club Road. And so if we can get everybody on the same page, we could have quite a nice opportunity to build some housing. And again, it's on city water and sewer, the city water and sewer that would need to be upgraded, but it's there.
Do you know the timeline?
That was my question too. Does I have to get in line behind the country club or can
No,
it be?
I'm hoping to do them concurrently. There's no reason not to move forward except negotiating with Department of Public Works to figure out how we can make them happen. I found some alternative sites. Tim, actually, who isn't here, Tim has an acre of land at the end of Dog River Road near the highway, which would be great for DPW to put stuff because,
Right near the garage.
yeah. Anyway, these are some of the housing ideas that I am working on.
Great, thank you.
Well,
You had also flagged a couple of things for me. Do you want to mention them here at all? That one was the Department of Housing, Community Development, and the Land Access and Opportunity Board hosting a small scale development workshop.
don't want to talk about that.
Okay, okay. No problem. Well, maybe I'll bring it up later.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, please.
I attended, Ben, I don't know if you, I didn't see you. The State Chamber of Commerce meeting was last week in Burlington, and every single person who stood up said that the biggest problem in Vermont is housing, like across the board. Oh, and I have a meeting. Oh, this is important. I met the president of UVM, doctor, and he put me immediately in touch with the person in charge of all of the Vermont health real estate. So I'm having a meeting with her like next week to talk about how the city can work with them to figure out more housing. I think there's a lot of potential at on the hill where the insurance company is. They have 275 acres. We could maybe get the two corporations to agree to build housing together or something. But that's also happening.
So you're having a meeting with National Life and.
I've had meetings with National Life. They
Okay.
weren't particularly interested,
Okay,
but I think if they were talking to another company that they might find more interest. So I'm trying to get the healthcare people and the insurance people, both of whom need workforce housing in Montpelier,
Yeah.
to cooperate to come up with a strategy for developing housing.
do they have childcare up there still or no?
I don't know.
National Life.
National
They
Life,
do.
yeah. Okay,
Children's
great.
House is there. It's
Yeah,
what it like capacity is like 20 kids, maybe.
Yeah, I wonder if they have an opportunity to expand that small center if they did workforce housing that could.
And do they,
Yeah,
do they own all the way down to Memorial Drive? I mean, every time I drive there,
They
that
have,
long stretch, right,
Yeah.
between the state parking, across from the state parking lot. I mean,
it's
Where the
roughly
house-
speaking, they own that entire thing between the highway and the road to get into town and all.
Isn't that also, like, commercial park or something?
They,
Like, it's not really,
well, we can do that.
we could
Yeah.
get them to change.
right. Okay, well, thank you, Matt. That's really helpful. Dan, we're gonna have you take notes now. Lauren's been taking notes so far. She can do whatever.
Man, have you seen the Montpelier Net Zero contest thing? There was a really
Yes.
interesting design for national life development.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have
The gondola, I mean, is awesome, but like the other stuff too.
Well, the guy, it's all about.
Right.
Yeah,
We need a couple of those gondolas.
I have seen it, and that was, and
What's
who
that?
ran it?
Dan Jones.
Yeah,
Ran
Dan-
it.
Dan
for
and I-
Sustainability in Montpelier.
I spent, New Year's Eve with him or something. Oh, cool buddies.
nice, nice. Well, I'm gonna, if it's okay with you all, I'm gonna jump over the priorities framework to some of the brief updates so that then, in hopes that we might capture a couple other people before I would hate to set the priorities without the full committee or at least a few other committee members here. Are you okay if I reorder the agenda? Yeah, okay. So the vacancy ordinance. So who's on that subcommittee? We have, yes, Dan, Ben, Carrie. Would you like it, Matt? Thank you. Who is able to give an update on them?
Or the city attorney rather.
Right, so. There's an attorney that the city uses for zoning. And I wrote the attorney a letter and it took them a while because. State House is in session and so he was busy. Basically, we didn't get to have a meeting to discuss it. And I think it would probably warrant a discussion before we talk about it in the larger group, but
Uh-huh.
there is he answered the questions, and I think what we need to do now is, as a subcommittee, return to him with other questions, because there were some pretty broad, I would say, general answers that we need more specific answers for our particular context.
Can you just clarify, like, is it viable with our city charter?
Yes,
Okay, great. So it is a viable option if folks want to move forward with it. It's just like how to do it.
how to do it and how much to do it.
Right. What the,
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
ultimate impact.
Okay, so the subcommittee is gonna get together to talk through these details. And then bring it here.
Matt, I've just been thinking about, we've been using like Burlington a lot as the example, but I actually think like St. Johnsbury would
So
be
I
a
had
better.
a meeting with St. John's
Great.
Ferry.
Good.
They dropped the ball. It wasn't my fault.
No, yeah, yeah.
But again, late this afternoon, I got an email asking, apologizing for not holding their meeting. And so I will be meeting with St. Johnsbury hopefully within the next week.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's that's good. I think that it might be more aligned than Burlington.
Yeah, closer.
It's closer size,
Size,
scale,
scale,
administrative capacity, all of it.
Yeah, okay.
I have a question. Are they split commercial vacancy and residential? I'm going
You know-
back to our discussion.
Right, I
We
honestly-
split them, I think.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I know it's for residential. I don't know about commercial.
In Burlington, it doesn't appear to be split
It's all properties.
Yeah.
All real properties.
because Burlington was. Reading between the lines from what the attorney wrote, Burlington was particularly concerned about a couple of developers who owned lots of different types of properties, and so they were targeting those people, which we've been warned against. The attorney.
Yeah, okay. The city council was interested in a timeline on how this would move forward and perhaps get before them. It sounds like we don't really know, but it's,
We don't, but I mean, it was a snafu today, but I'm sure Rebecca would be interested to have another meeting as
Okay.
soon as possible, and
so I guess I would just ask, when you meet next, can you set a tentative timeline? That I could then get back to the city council and say, we'll bring you this topic Which we won't do until this committee has been able to discuss it. So subcommittee first, then come here to discuss, and then if there's alignment or majority, support, we can then move to bring it to the council. Carrie, did you want to weigh in?
No, I accidentally unmuted myself.
And it's amazing I could see that from here. I'm feeling
Very
like
impressive, actually.
a
Yeah.
test today. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
And why does the legislature stop being?
May,
Late May, probably.
So our timeline may be disrupted by the availability of the attorney,
Okay,
because he said the reason it took him so long to answer the first letter was because the legislature.
the council has energy around it, and so I'm not sure. I think waiting till late May is not going to be a good
I'm not,
idea.
I'm just saying that it may be difficult to pin down a specific timeline
right.
because it's not exclusively our
Yeah,
job to
yeah.
figure out the time.
Do what you can. We'll pull in city council members if you need to nudge along the attorney,
Or use a different one.
or use a different one. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because
This is the one that Mike gave me, so. Yeah.
yeah, the council was like, I want to see, people have been emailing me like almost weekly, asking for updates and eager to see it before March. So I don't know if that's going to be possible, but I'm just saying, if the subcommittee could meet and do their piece, then we can try to get you the legal resources you need to get the answers.
Great.
Okay, great. Budget matters. Carrie, you were going to cover this.
Yes, sure. So the budget that was approved by the city council includes $100,000 in the housing trust fund. And, we had hoped it would be more, but 100,000 seemed very like the most realistic amount we were going to get. And that's what came to us as a proposal from the city manager. And that's what stayed in there. So that feels like a win. And then the other thing was, what is it? The development of the tax stabilization
Oh, yeah.
policy. Yeah, that needed to get back on the ballot. So that is back on the ballot. And it's if people don't remember, it's just a corrected version of what the city council approved last year to go on the ballot. So it makes a change to our policy such that it allows us to align with the state law in a way that's favorable. And we tried to do this last year, but there was a glitch on the way to the printer, basically a Microsoft Word format problem, and the wrong wording got on the ballot. So it passed in spite of that. And the council voted to put it back on with the corrected wording on the ballot. So hopefully that should just go through and be okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you think we need to do we have any concerns about the public not understanding this? Should we do any publicity around this to make sure people do understand it?
I mean, I don't think it'd be a bad idea because I'm sure that people don't understand it. It's definitely not easy to understand. So I think it'll be worth it. I think it's probably fairly clear that this isn't something that's going to cost the city money, that it works in our favor and it's a good thing and helps with development. But it would probably be a good idea for us to put out something, even just a blurb to that effect.
Yeah, okay, Matt?
Mhm.
I can absolutely confirm that nobody understands it because I receives the requests and
Yeah,
nobody understands what it is. They know they want it, but they don't know what it means.
I find too that like at least the only one I've been involved in was the one about Walgreens, but
Yep.
I felt like from the community, I heard a lot of concern that it was a giveaway to developers,
Yeah.
and it's just not,
You're right.
and I think like if there was a way to succinctly, clearly articulate that to people that like nobody's getting a free handout here, it's
Yep,
I think it's really valuable.
I absolutely agree. I don't know what format that would be, but I'd be happy to work with city council or whomever wants to try to figure out an explanation, or I don't know if it's like a case study or.
No, I think it's really actually like super succinct. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just be like, hey, in case there's questions about the this is how it works. And like, it's not a giveaway. Like,
I think it would be important to not to confuse the issue so that people think that what they're voting on is having a tax stabilization policy at all, because we have that already. We have that. We're just making a little technical change to what we already have. And so I would be nervous about kind of opening up the whole question to, should we be doing tax stabilization? Because that's not what's on the ballot. And that's not a conversation I really want to open up at this point.
Carrie, would you be willing to work with Matt on a paragraph or two sentences?
Yep,
Yeah,
no problem.
great. And then think about like the outreach plan. Like, should it be front porch forum? Can you at least to the housing committee and we can send it around?
Yeah,
to
I think that sounds good.
Like, Matt, is there another way you can get the information out?
We could put it on the website.
Yeah, we can put it on the website.
Well, the city's been doing these regular things about the budget, so it could do a thing about
Yeah.
the ballot.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's great.
That's a good
So
idea.
it could be on the website. Yeah, Sandy.
The bridge is a great. thing, too. And
Yeah.
there's plenty of time.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Carrie and Matt, thank you. You will write up the paragraph and think about easy outreach.
Yep.
Yeah,
And I'll talk to Evelyn too, because there's going to be a table that is and excuse me. There will be a table that the city has that for people to ask questions, so we can make sure that whoever's sitting at that table will have the description in front of them so that they can field any questions people might have.
okay. I'm gonna come back to you, Carrie, for the rest of the budget update, but before I do, does anyone have Tim's cell phone that they could text him? Do you have it, Sandy? Yeah, would you mind texting him? I know Sean is not here tonight. He had let me know that. Yeah, and maybe Tim's out of town too, but I know he's gonna be at a meeting we're in tomorrow morning at 8:30, so at least he's engaged. Okay, Carrie, back to you on the budget.
Okay, yes. And so then this wasn't exactly the budget, but it was something that we had.
He's right behind you, Sandy. He just came in.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Okay.
Sorry, Carrie. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. That's okay. So the planning department came to us with a proposal for increasing development fees. And both Ben and I were able, especially Ben, to really make the case to city council that the housing committee had strongly recommended against that. And could we please hold off on that for now? So he came back with kind of a plan to put together some kind of a rationale for the future. Because I can't speak exactly for, or maybe Matt can, but it's about, making sure that their costs are covered and that there are some additional costs that have gone up. And then the other thing was the appeals fees, which we kind of pulled out from development fees in our conversation. And I'm not sure where the committee is on that one, but increase those fees for people bringing appeals.
We had talked about it and then been silent on it because we thought that might be a good thing, but we didn't take a vote.
Okay,
So we just
great.
let that go. The development, if anyone wants to take that up, let me know, but otherwise it is in the budget. I think there'd probably be support around that here from the conversation we had, but if people are not there, flag that. On the development fees though increasing, you're waiting on a proposal from Mike Miller or like a rationale from Mike Miller, or what is the next step?
We voted on to increase the appeals fees.
Yes,
Matt might be able to remember the exact number, but it's like at least 3 times higher than it was.
right.
And then we also gave them authority to increase, or to not to increase, but to create new fees based on things that they weren't collecting for before. So it's like a very discrete kind of thing. But in terms of like actually increasing the fees that you would pay for a permit, we said, we're not ready to do that right now. I do know, as Carrie said, that Mike is preparing a kind of justification or comparative analysis of what other communities are doing in relation to fees. And they're going to present that information and I think provide us with another opportunity to vote on it if you choose to. Matt, is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I would just say that, for example, today there was there's a listserv for state planning officials, and there was a discussion today about fees. It's a topic that is discussed often, and so now we have like Richmond's fee schedule. So now we have another data point for a set of data points for comparison of what we're charging versus what other municipalities are charging. And Nick and Meredith have both been trying to find all the comparables so we can see.
I just wonder if we need to weigh in on this again, the development fees question.
I think there's a lot of confused signals coming from council. On the one hand, tax abatement is not a giveaway. On the other hand, they're talking about waiving fees for the development fees for water and sewer, whatnot, at Country Club Road. They're not raising fees, development fees, in a task they asked the planning office to do, 6 months ago or 8 months ago, because of concern about alienating developers. And so it might be worth it for us to sort of try to, pull that together into something a little more coherent than, in this case we do, in this case we don't.
I'll speak to, I can only speak to like my own vote, but I'm looking at these issues. I think guidance from this housing committee is extremely important, particularly like in this issue, we specifically said the housing committee does not want to raise development fees, right? I'm just looking at like case by case of like what incentivizes development and what does not, right? And in this particular instance, I mean, we did get clear direction from the housing committee around fees. It also isn't that much money. Like we're talking about like $18,000, I think was the difference. And yeah, I mean, that's real money.
For the year.
Yeah, that's real money. But it also, to me, just feels like sending a signal of like, we want housing in Montpelier. By the way, check out our new increased fee schedule. Doesn't feel like a great move. And maybe it's just optics, but it feels important. I feel for this town, it's really important.
Yeah,
I think one thing to be careful of with the fee piece is it isn't always what you think. And until you go through it and you realize what's going on, like, so you pay a water hookup fee if you're building a new unit, a new house, which is whatever it is, $1,200 or something. Okay, well, then it turns out you've got to use the city's contractor to tie into the pipe. So that's another $3,400. And when you start adding up all these pieces that happen along the way for even a simple project, it seems like it'd be worth looking at some projects and looking what the real cost is to people. Because that's the word that's on the street. That's what people that are considering looking at Montpelier are hearing. Be careful there. And it really adds up to way more than the $18,000 that you had in your budget.
So it sounds like the council has voted already to not increase the development fees.
Okay.
And Mike is coming back with a rationale around how fees are, how would you say it? Like,
I would say,
assessed or-
I would say we didn't vote to not improve. We just voted to increase the appeals fees and some smaller fees that were new. We didn't take action on
Okay.
his proposal for increased development fees. And then he's coming back to us with justification for increasing it and presumably asking us to take a vote.
And our minutes refer to a freeze.
Yes. It did.
For when we passed, whatever we passed on to
Yes,
city,
and not the appeals, but the development.
right, just a temporary freeze. It was not a permanent thing, but I think the optics are very confused. I mean, I realize you guys are using optics as looking good, but I think it just looks confused. People don't know what the real costs are. Sometimes it looks like a giveaway. Sometimes it looks like not much money,
So I'm wondering if process-wise, we should look at Mike's, what he writes up before we do anything further on this. Right now, our position stands as we want a development fee free, no increase. The council knows that. We don't have this additional information that I'm going to be provided. I don't think there's anything new for us to consider because we don't have additional data. So if folks are okay, I think we would just pause on this and let the original vote stand until we have more information. Are people okay with that? Just give me like a, yeah. Okay, Sandy, you're okay. Okay, great. I'm gonna go back now. I'm gonna jump back up so that we can have the priorities framework and order of operations conversation, then we can go back down to the updates just a second. Thanks for joining.
Sorry.
See you later. So I think the document to refer to is the proposed framework for establishing housing committee priorities that I had sent around. And I will voice over it for anyone that doesn't have it. I wasn't able to print copies tonight. But the prioritization factors that we discussed last time were that we might want to consider were number of units created, city council support, timeliness, like if the budget is moving, well, we should weigh in on the budget. or if the planning commission is deciding something and it's relevant here, we should consider it. Quick wins, something that's easy, like the tax stabilization. We needed to update that came up. We could just do that quickly and get it on the ballot. If it adds capacity to city staff, if there are co-benefits, like does it increase district heat, or does it boost the work of another committee, or those types of co-benefits, or duplication with other committees might hold us back from advancing something. So those were the factors that came up in our last conversation. What I did was try to think about, like, given those factors, what our approach might be, and then put it into a reactive and proactive track. Or a, timely and a planful track. So because there are things that are just happening we want to jump on, and there are things we might want to be moving forward deliberately, regardless of the timeline. In terms of the prioritization of approach, I was suggesting that we center the number of housing units created in our prioritization, that goal of 75 units a year should be very relevant to driving our prioritization. That we are routinely checking in with city council for their buy-in, and that we don't advance things that have no support with the council. Balance timely and reactive, as I just said, with planful and proactive on dual tracks, and use the subcommittee structure to forward multiple initiatives at the same time. With the full committee offering directional guidance and making final decisions. So the subcommittees are like incubating, researching, innovating, and then bringing it here. So that's my proposal for the approach. Before I get into details, I would love your feedback on just the approach itself. So centering the number of units, city council buy-in, balancing both timely and reactive with planful and proactive, and using a subcommittee framework. How does that land with you? The approach itself? Good. Any suggestions on things you would like to see different there?
Center the number of housing units created in our prioritization.
Yeah, I think if we had a choice and something would create 15 units and something would create 0, we would pick the 15 over the 0. Yeah. Use it as like a weighting.
I thought it was just abstract. We want 75 as a header every time. And that doesn't seem
Right.
that useful.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right, well then, in terms of the order of timing and priorities, I went back to the lists you'd given, the subcommittees had given, and then I tried to do my best guess on what falls into the timely and reactive category and the planful and proactive category, and then put them on a timeline. So, would it be helpful for me to walk through that list, or do you want to just react to the list?
A quick walkthrough is probably good.
Okay, sure. So I have it done by like 2-month increments, except for the end of the year, which I have at like a 3-month increment. So 2 months, so February 1st through the end of March. Some of the timely lists are like anything related to the budget. So housing trust fund, local development fees, anything related to legislative matters. So statewide appeals revisions is what I had there, and the vacancy ordinance, because it has city council interest, and it's, they're ready to review that. In terms of planful or proactive, updating the tax stabilization policy, reviewing the development regs, short-term rental registration, and technical assistance for developers. And this would be more explaining CHIP and how CHIP the thinking behind that was, okay, we have tax stabilization, we have development agreements, and we have CHIP. How could we help developers understand how to stack multiple benefits at the same time? So it's not really, the vision wasn't like, let's help you do your job better. It's more like, this is what the city could do for you in terms of benefits. That was the thinking. So I should probably rename that. Because it's not really technical assistance. But the second phase, so the April 1st to the end of May was, weighing in on the land bank legislation, if that's relevant, thinking about the local sprinkler ordinance, which I don't know if that goes into timely or if it goes into planful. You can give me feedback on that in a minute. continue on the planful side, reviewing development regs and assessing and shaping the infill analysis. And then the rest are all just on the planful and proactive side, because I can't see what's coming up. I just don't know. So for June and July, inventory commercial properties for residential conversion and thinking about incentives. For August and September, the city planning department captures lessons learned from Country Club Road. And then October through the end of the year, explore new policies to promote housing or reevaluate city-owned property and potential for that. What is your feedback on this? Any of it? The structure, the substance, the timing? What is your feedback? Yes, Sandy.
I think the overall framework makes sense.
Okay.
My comments were very detailed, just small things, a little at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
I sent an email to you that I saw 3 things missing from the chart, which would be looking at land inside the Capitol complex. And I don't know how that fits into your chart. And specifically the post office, 87 State, and any large pieces of land that are being underused. There are several large pieces of land that are being underused in the city, and finding out how we could help.
Yeah.
What needs to be done.
Yeah. That was your first one. Yeah, I have the email in front of me. Thank you for voicing that. I'm wondering, like, what are you thinking that this would be, you know, we did have a subcommittee that was focused on promoting development, which I feel like a lot of these pieces fall into that because they're not city-owned property. Yeah.
And it's kind of not being optimal.
But also the Court Street
Yeah.
The Court
rebuild.
Street was, is in a drawing that
Yeah.
Court Street one, I think, is a separate category because the state has, didn't they pass that law that they passed a bill last year for in many cities where they have state offices to look at what they could do to convert some land to housing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just sitting there, and I don't think that that's necessarily the subcommittee. You could decide however you want to do it, but I hope it gets special attention.
Okay.
Matt.
Yeah.
Sean Comprehensive is coming tomorrow to the Montpelier Live Business Community Meeting to give an update on 87 State Street, the old post office building. So I will have more information in 12 hours. It was an executive order that was the state inventory property of the state owns that governor issued. We have maps I shared before. I don't know if you were here. I have maps of both. And then I did the same thing with Nick in our office. I did an inventory of city-owned property. So we have both city-owned property and state-owned property maps, which I'm happy to share. And maybe before we got here, the stump dump and the private property adjacent to stump dump, that all is kind of that emerged out of that process of doing a city inventory of city-owned property to look for places where we might build. It's kind of the direct result of that process.
Okay.
And the city, oh,
Sorry.
But if it's on the same topic, you can go ahead with different.
I was just on Baldwin Street, which is a continuation of state. So the state divested one building, which VPERG bought. There's another one that is for sale, has been for sale forever. It used to be an apartment building. It's the most ungated building on the street, but it would make at least 4 apartments. And there's one next to the parking lot, one of the Capitol adjacent parking lots that will probably come back on the market that is prime for making into housing in many ways, but probably expensive. But that's 9-10 units.
Yeah, okay, so just to wrap up that, and Dan, coming to you, I think because we had a subcommittee that was focusing on development, the outside of city-owned property, I feel like I would like to send an email to that group coming out of this conversation and being like, you know, Sandy, I have your email so I can tee up something. And then just let the folks who are on that decide, like, do you want to prioritize this? And what would that look like? And if no one on that subcommittee does want to prioritize any of that, then I can put it out to the full group. Does anyone want to take this on? We can form like a whole different group that like the vacancy ordinance is doing. So that's what I'll do process wise. Dan, why don't I come over to you? And then Sandy, I'll come back to you later because you had a couple other things I think in that email that might be relevant to this, but.
One thing to add to the planful proactive, is assuming the budget gets approved, we'll have enough in the reserve to make the grant year or do the grant cycle as spelled out in the Housing Trust Fund.
Oh, yeah.
Guidelines. So the request for application starts July 1st.
Okay, so we would then put in between the June and July, like, or actually in the July timeline that we would review the applications and make recommendations to council.
Yeah, the request for proposals published July 1st, the deadline of August 15th. Review within 14 calendar days of receipt in the application shall be reviewed by the planning department. Those are then passed to the housing committee, and then we have 60 days after an application.
Okay, great. I added review housing trust fund applications, make recommendations to city council.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And then the other part of that is that there was some idea to look at the guidelines themselves, because right now they're essentially geared to so that only Down Street or another nonprofit could apply. We could review it. Might not be prudent for this year, but also given the funding issues from facing affordable housing developers, it may be prudent to have a different a plan B in case there are no applications this year. We could still use Housing Trust Fund money for some good.
I'm wondering, that's a great idea. I'm wondering if we created a subcommittee to go back and look to see if we didn't do anything for a subcommittee for the Housing Trust Fund, because it was already moving with the funding. So I don't know if we formed like a group that I could go back to, a subcommittee there. So I think what I'll do, people think about it here. What I'll do is I'll just send an email out after this to say, does anyone want to work on that?
But Sean and I were on the review for that.
Oh, great.
So
can I kind of just put you on there?
I don't see why not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put you and Sean. I think Sean has been eager to do more. Like he has been saying, he's excited to do more. So I think he would be open to that. When would you need to do the review and the recommendations on those guidelines?
I don't know.
In order to make sure you have enough time by July.
Well, the guidelines just need to be published by July 1st, so we would need to approve them presumably. Well, I guess they need to be passed by council.
They weren't?
They were. The
This would be
guidelines
updated guidelines.
These would be updated guidelines.
What about between the April 1st and May 30th time block?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so I'm gonna say review and revise housing trust fund guideline. Okay, great. Anything, what else do people have on this? Yes, Alex.
I'm on the second block of planful proactive, the item assess shape infill analysis.
Yeah.
But I sort of want to take a step back from it and talk about publicizing what the options are for something other than larger scale developers. So infill is usually a smaller scale development. And I think a lot of people might not be aware of whether their properties are eligible for subdivision, for a simple subdivision, whether they could build an ADU, what kinds of support is available for ADUs. I mean, the state still has considerable support for ADUs. And I think if we could shape that in a way that it just lets people know, 40% of the properties in Montpelier could support an ADU. I made that up.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that kind of thing. Did you know that? That we could at least spark thinking about kinds of development in people who don't think of themselves necessarily as developers. But people who could,
So would this be like,
Right?
yeah, would this be around, I'll go to that in just a sec. Would this be something like develop an education, like educational resources, like develop and promote educational resources?
We put stuff in the bridge on a regular basis, maybe we should have a monthly, every other issue, we should have a column on housing possibilities that's not geared toward developers. Did you know kind of column, or, something like that, so that, I mean, somebody had a thing on the Front Porch Forum up on the dogleg behind College Street, wants to sell 2 lots. Contiguous, it claims. I mean, it's from when we look at the map, and I couldn't figure out quite where they were. They must be pretty small. But for $195,000 for development. And that was not for one of them, right? And that was not the largest lot on that dogleg.
Okay,
By a long shot.
Dan.
Well, just, yeah, I mean, following up on that, like the infill analysis CVRPC did for Barry, they just looked at, slope analysis and flood. And then here it is like, okay, all this land is developable, but then if we can then put layers on that, whether it's, I mean, how it can be used, setbacks, et cetera, what are the opportunities? I mean, it's a lot of work, but I think it's really useful to have that document for anybody, any, property owner, whoever, to be able to pick up and say, oh, okay, well, that a lot of the work's already been done, and I don't even have to necessarily go to the zoning office to sit down with Meredith for 2 hours, So anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. I mean,
The
Matt's
research
just gonna
itself.
do it overnight, I think, but that kind of, that,
There are layers for slopes and floodplain and all that already on the city's ArcGIS map.
yeah.
So those things are easy to find.
Right, yeah.
I think personally, I think a lot of people's imagination gets intimidated. I hear people coming into the planning office all the time, like, oh, really? I can do that?
Yeah.
Every day. Like, it seems like somebody walks in kind of looking to remodel their bathroom, and then they're like, oh, really? I can make another whole house on my lot?
Right.
And I don't know what the strategy is for that, but the state does have new training, planning, development classes, because they are trying to promote this. I think there are model house plans that they're developing where they want them to be pre-approved, so they can't be appealed.
Yeah. Is this where we want to talk about there's a small scale development workshop February 21st here at the senior center as an introduction to small scale development for those who are new to development, or simply development curious.
Where'd you find that?
Matt sent it to me. I'll send it around to everyone here. It's just as like an FYI, but that is coming up and an opportunity. I think, Dan, going back to what you were saying, I think you're making the case that there's value in this infill analysis, that we should keep it on the list. Someone should look into it and see, maybe it's pointing to what's already there, or in a document that's more promotional type document, or maybe it's going beyond what's there, more Barry style. So my goal will be this is iterative, right? Like, we're going through a process right now, but after we have this list, we're going to need owners for this stuff, what's on the list. So I'm going to do some shuttle diplomacy between all of you to figure out who wants to take what, when. And so we'll come back to it. This won't just get lost here. We'll come back to it to make sure there are some owners on these things. And, I'll come right to you in just a sec. One other thing is, I think, Alex, you were talking about something that's a little different. It's like making sure that homeowners understand what they can do today. And we don't have that on the list.
Right.
So what month, given all the things on the list, do you want to see that in?
Well, I think, I mean, Dan's response, it goes with infill analysis.
Yeah, okay, I'll
goes
maybe
with,
those.
And I don't think it's about targeting someone and saying, oh, by the way, did you know your property could? I think it's about saying things like, did you know that 40% of properties in Montpelier could? Just getting people thinking about it and being able to direct them to resources.
So educational and promotional plan, to, for homeowners. To,
And small scale development.
for homeowners and small scale development, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, great.
Right, that's a
I
bigger
think the
development.
reality check we need though is, because I agree with this concept, but I think a lot of people in Montpelier have imaginations and come in and want to do projects. And, you come in and it's this great concept, like we want more housing, and then you get bludgeoned with this zoning code.
We're gonna come to that in just a
No,
second.
but it's brutal because it affects this. You can't do this and then throw people out and have them get whacked. And that's what we're doing
Mhm.
over and over. And that's why you look at how many times a lot sells and somebody has a dream and they want to build a house and they get into it. And God, and a year later they sell it and run as fast as they can. We can
Mhm.
find multiple cases where that's happened around town.
Mhm.
Zoning is that bad, guys.
Mhm.
So just making good, like, oh, you can come in and do all this with your lot is great until you find out 2 weeks later, you can't.
Mhm. Sandy?
Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission was planning to have a program last year. I don't know if it actually went through. Where they ran an RFP to hire an architect to act as a tutor or a mentor for homeowners. And then a homeowner would have to submit a short application about what they were hoping to do. And then all the applicants would get from that would be selected the work scope. And I don't know if it happened, but it wasn't really, Christian Meyer was running it and it was a really good concept. So basically the services would have been free to the homeowners or new free. And I think that would really help people get over the hump of, the good idea to actually getting in an application.
Like an ambassador type person, or connector.
Yeah, it's like a mentor,
Yeah.
we help
Yeah.
you figure this and this out. I've helped one couple in Barrie. And it is really overwhelming for people.
Yeah. I was talking to someone who plays that role, now it's as a consultant, somewhere else, and he was saying that, he did help one developer in Montpelier try to go through, and they decided not to. They stopped in the process, in part because of the stuff you were bringing up. Alex.
Well, I have two things. One is that I think I read somewhere that somebody was working in that capacity with a single family house for Habitat in Barrie, but I can't remember who it was, so that's not relevant. And the second thing was that there is this is coming off of my experience of being on the Development Review Board. There is a real leaning toward single family homes with large yards or with, on half-acre lots. And I think the Stonewall Meadows thing was pulled back from a cluster development to something else.
Yeah.
I know someone else who had a 2-acre plot and wanted to up on the Northfield side of town, wanted to develop 6 more lots, and the Development Review Board couldn't see I'm supporting Tim here, couldn't see their way to that, even though the regs allowed it. So it was a sketch plan review. And that person, for I think very complicated reasons, and not only because of the DRB discussion, pulled back from the plan.
Yeah. Okay.
But the DRB routinely grants simple subdivisions, whatnot. So
Well, I want to come back to the development regs in just a minute, but before I go back to because I think that's going to be a deeper topic we'll get into here in just a second. Is there anything else on the timing or substance or style of this prioritization? Because then we're just going to keep we're moving into action and then bringing back things to this, body. And I'm really pleased with what has already moved, getting the 100,000 into the housing trust fund, getting the tax stabilization update on the ballot. The vacancy ordinance conversation is active. We're having a conversation with the planning commission in the morning to talk through how we might engage with them as they do their review on the development regs. So there are things like, that have started moving. And there's clearly a lot more to do, but any other comments on this framework before we move? Yes.
Yeah, I had asked about the interviewing developers
Yes.
of different sizes. Who have started the process and didn't proceed. Or people who haven't even started. And I know you've been interviewing them, but I think it would be a really good idea if at least at least 2 people could interview them, or 3, because that helps generate more questions. And then that group can report back. I think that would really help. It doesn't directly relate to adding more houses. But I think we might want to add a category of just, general improvement of the structure. If that's a criterion for something being important, I think that would be really important to get feedback.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. I started doing this because I was worried that the vacancy ordinance might be confusing or concerning to developers, and I wanted to understand like if there were things we could do at the same time. So if we did move forward with vacancy ordinance, are there more incentives or promotional things we could do in coupling with them? So that's why I started reaching out to people, and then I started hearing about all these other issues that were coming up. I think we could definitely form a more formal process around that. Like we could invite a bunch of developers here and then we talk with them for just a meeting, and get input, like a feedback session. We could have we could form like a group that does the interviews and has a list of interview questions and then, does a write-up and comes back to us. What's your interest level in this idea?
Sounds redundant to what happened a year ago, except I guess this is more focusing on specifically developers that did.
Plus all of the information from a year ago is kind of lost. And
Can't hear you.
all the information from a year ago is kind of lost now.
What happened a year ago?
They were inviting 1 or 2 developers in every meeting.
And contractors and
And contractors,
Architects.
and it was really useful. Part of the issue is that some of the developers, like James Moore, have been since that time. I don't remember if Gabe Longinus came in or not, but so the list is new.
Right.
But I don't think that information necessarily went anywhere other than the minutes.
Yeah.
Well, should we, as a starting place, go back to that? I mean, I just wonder if we should.
Yeah, I mean, why ask the same person twice?
Yeah,
But-
yeah. Okay. Well, why don't I see if I can find those with Rebecca, those old minutes, and we look at them and people can read them and we can see if there are gaps that we want to fill, either like a new group of people we bring in or a few people we bring in, just so it doesn't feel like I talked to this body 6 months ago and, why are you inviting me in again? And we're like, well, we're half new and, they just might not love that. Okay.
I think I need the list. I need the.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, send whatever you have and we can cross-reference it. So I will commit to getting that information from Rebecca and then looking at what your information is, Sandy, and then putting it out to you all and just saying like, do you want to invite people to a future meeting or does anyone want to do these interviews? But it sounds like people are open and excited to get feedback. Excited might not be the word, but open and ready.
I found the notes from that same meeting in 2011. I can share those.
Nice. I love it. Send it over. I will take that on. Okay.
Yeah, like I don't only want to hear from people who have not successfully, like, I'd like to hear from some people who were able to pull off a project.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm sure they have plenty of complaints too along the way, but like a mix of both.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's getting stalled and who,
I agree.
and like, I think some of that will be captured. It sounds like those are some of the folks you already talked to, so that's probably captured in minutes, but
Yes.
like, I don't only want to hear.
I agree. Shouldn't
Never
only,
actually
shouldn't
developed
only be the people that didn't get through, yes.
Would not be a good use of our time, but I really wish somebody would make a documentary on how to build a house in Montpelier, like, start to finish, see what.
Ongoing, it can only be start
Right.
to ongoing.
Yeah.
Interesting simulation. Matt, why don't you share that? And then I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna move us forward.
In large part as a response to the discussions we've had here, I've asked Meredith Crandall, the zoning administrator, to do a tabletop exercise with me where I come in with a piece of property and say, walk me through what happens next. And just to see as an exercise, and I will be taking notes and names.
Nice, great,
Well,
thank you.
Can you model cost overruns?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So Alex?
I have another question that's related, and it has to do with inventory and stuff, and that is, I mean, housing is the need of the day that's identified sort of nationally, statewide, locally, right? And a lot of things get drawn into housing, things about class, about homelessness. I mean, you don't need to go there. But what I don't know, in spite of being involved somewhat, is how much housing has actually happened in the last couple of years. How many things have been rehabilitated? How many dwelling units have been created? Permits issued? And
I think
I
there's,
saw
is
that.
that the website that I sent around?
yeah,
Yeah.
but some of the stuff I looked at, I mean, I didn't do a close study, didn't look so bad, right? When you put Montpelier up next, right?
0.
Right, but is that true, 0? Because it's, I mean, in terms of what I've seen coming before the DRB, it's not 0. But I don't know what happens when stuff leaves.
Yeah, this kind of gets into some of the things Tim's talking about. And then they're like, oh, I need to do this engineering.
Well, Tim's is
thing.
going forward, I know that.
Yeah, well, let's move into that. It's, unless you have like last call on the priorities for now, just for now. Okay, so let's talk about the development, the development regs. So Tim, last time we had a meeting, we were talking about whether or not you were teeing up, should this be doing, should we go through an iterative, like, a more detailed section by section review, or should it be kind of all redone from the beginning, and reset? And we were having a back and forth about this. There were some concerns brought up about it. Some of those concerns were, okay, well, if you just throw everything out, there's going to be appeal issues or murkiness because like we figured out things over time. You don't want to lose the things we figured out. But also we really want to streamline the planning commission. We know is going through an education process around this right now. They were asked to look at the regs. They are then going to, by March, start to make changes. I understand from Mike Miller. So we have the opportunity through the work that you are doing and Sandy is doing to then, and we could all be doing, to then feed into that process in whatever way we want. I have it on the priorities list, but how did you leave that meeting, Sandy and Tim? Like, what were your thoughts leaving the meeting last time? And is this something you do want to approach in a much deeper way, or do you want to wait, talk to the planning commission and then kind of figure it out after tomorrow? What were some of your takeaways coming out of the meeting last time?
I guess I'd be curious to know what everybody else feels about it. I kind of feel like I'm cementing my own opinion from my own experiences.
It is your
and
subcommittee
I'm not.
with Sandy.
I really feel like we just need to start over. It's such a mess. And, I found that the 1980, I don't know, no, it was 2018 zoning code in the office the other day that I just happened to have a copy of when I was cleaning some things out. And it's like 184 pages. So just in the time since then, it's currently 217 plus 68 flood district. It's just, I think the planning commission activity, it'd be interesting to listen, but it feels like, just rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. It's like, we're just like shifting things around and redrafting little parts, but we're really not looking at it comprehensively and how it works and how it obviously doesn't, because I think if it was a more friendly code, we would see more housing here. And we had decades of very little housing being created.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I think that it might be compelling to find some solutions. So like, are there communities that are doing this really well in Vermont? Is there a form-based code that you could be looking at? Is it some other strategy? Like, what is it? Because I think right now, I'm hearing like, you go through like technically and make these detailed changes through the planning commission work. We could influence that. You could influence that through the planning commission's work, or you could propose an alternative, but we don't know, we don't have the alternative. And that would take effort to find the alternative. But yeah, so I think Sandy and then Dan.
So, I have a bunch of colleagues, and I'm sure Matt's tuned into this group as well, that are really on the cutting edge. AARP is actually a really good entity that acts as a client. And there are things going, our planning commission looked at the topic of eliminating lot sizes, for instance. Several years ago, we talked about that, and then it went away. So what East Montpelier is doing is one of the most progressive things of just possibly, I don't know if they're doing it, they're definitely doing it or not, but they want to talk about making an overlay district for priority housing. And if you're doing priority housing in that overlay district, zoning limits, minimums would not apply. So that's a completely different way of looking. Can I step back one further step? I think it's important this housing committee is focusing on housing, not the entire ordinance. Because there are a lot of things in the ordinance that are not about housing, like signs,
Like street signs or
and
something.
commercial development.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so there's that. What are we actually looking at and advising on? And then there's a question of what can we learn from people outside us, which I just answered. And then there's some moving down in specificity. There are some 3 things that really stood out to me. I think I said a couple weeks ago, I had to do a major, like every single line in the ordinance review for a project I'm working on. And the number 1 issue for confusion for people is the overlap that Montpelier has with state rules. And part of that is a transition from the state doing review to they're pushing it to municipalities. So it is important that we start to develop those, but other areas are complete overlap and they're contradictory. So one is accessibility. We don't need to look at accessibility for anything other than owner occupied single family home. It shouldn't even be in the ordinance. And what was the other one? I forgot. Well, I can't, there's another one that's just major. The sprinkler ordinance.
Yeah.
You look at it, you go like, why is this more restrictive than what the state's doing?
Right.
So, and then in that, the way our ordinance is structured now, there is site plan rules, and then later on there's subdivision rules. And then there's also PUD rules, and they outright contradict each other in some places.
Yeah.
And that just puts the little steam starts to come out of your head after you've been looking at it for 3 days. And then there's these outright contradictions. One example is solar. Our solar ordinance is very confusing. You have to have a lot of a certain size, but what if it's in a district that doesn't, that the district minimum size is smaller than what they say you have to have for your solar? It's where you just sort of like close the book and say, okay, that's just kind of done.
Yeah. That's discouraging.
Every single one of those things is appealable. And so that problem, it gets exponentially larger.
Yeah.
Especially with, look at, and then the third major thing is the vague sections in the ordinance. And there are a lot of vague sections. And when it is, Mike has done an amazingly good job of making some things very clear, like, in a cottage cluster, the porch has to be so many square feet with a minimum of 8-foot depth. And the garden has to be 300 square feet. I know. You're like, well, why does this need to be? It either should be not at all, or it should be so specific that it's really clear and Meredith can check the box.
Mhm.
And then I agree with Tim. It drives me nuts if there's, but on the other hand, if it said something ridiculous like other parts do, of the yard needs to be big enough to be enjoyed by children, right? If we draw that,
Right.
what we think, that will get, boom, appealed immediately.
Okay.
Fair
Because
housing
it's-
violation too.
Do you see what?
Yeah, no, I see.
So
I
we have
see.
a lot
This
of
is-
those sections, which I'm happy to do after February 18th to share. And that might be helpful. But I think other developers will also have that input of where are the real friction points in the ordinance, because they really are there.
Yeah, and it sounds like I'm sorry, Mike has collected a bunch of information from the public that
Mhm.
the planning commission is considering. So I'm hoping that some of that is in there. Our question still remains though, of like, do we want to propose a whole alternative approach? Dan?
Sandy made me think of many other things, but I think, which we probably don't have time for, but well, similarly to, an overlay district, town I grew up in was like a destination town. Housing's a real problem. Employers need staff, but there's nowhere to live. And so they basically, instead of, rewriting the whole zoning ordinance, they, for a temporary time, just basically have, I'm not even sure exactly what the wording is, basically for workforce housing, so that employers can build housing density. Regulations have no, because density is an issue there too, where, certain parts are dense, certain parts aren't. So they basically identified one hurdle and said, okay, density rules don't matter as long as it's,
That's right.
Yeah,
so it's, I mean, I'm not saying that's the appropriate one from Montpelier, but it's saying identify the one, and then instead of rewriting everything, it's, well, it doesn't matter because it can be this dense here.
Yeah,
You
and so
just toss it off.
these are the solution, or did you have something? Yeah.
Yeah, after.
Oh, different topic.
No. So,
Oh, I was just going to say that these are the kinds of solutions that I think would need to be considered and then fed into the planning commission process. Like, it would look like you come up with 5 ideas that are different, like, and they're looking at one chapter that month, and you come in and say, in this chapter, I would strike 60% and I would add this, this, and this. This is what you should consider. And then have them have a conversation with you. Like, I think that would be one approach. And then, I mean, I know we're talking to them in the morning, so we can talk about process here if there's interest. And it sounds like you two definitely have interest to do this work. And, maybe Dan wants to join you on this. Yes,
Yeah,
other
well,
Dan.
Yeah, so I had 2 things. One is that, I have my own, set of things and that I'd like to propose, but it seems like the issue here is whether there's trust in Mike to move forward with some pretty heavy pruning, which is what I gathered from the meeting from Tim and Sandy, is if the process that Mike outlined, I think that the solution should be that if housing committee can recommend a whole raft of changes, that would have more weight than an individual weighing in and, chipping in a piece here, a piece there, over time. But the proposal as that Sandy sent was for an independent, third party, the kind of expert to kind of weigh in and review and check the work that's been done on the code. I think that's it.
Okay, here's what I propose, because I recognize that we need to cover a couple other things tonight. I would propose that we listen to what the planning commission, chair and vice chair in the morning want to, you know, how they're looking at this approach. Gauge their openness to considering our information, because the city council wants us to work through like that process. That process is coming to them. Even if we differ, you could do like a dissenting opinion, you know, like they're doing this, we would recommend this or something. Like there's a way that you could do it. But why don't we have that conversation in the morning, then decide if you want to put in the effort. And if you want to put in the effort, you can start the work and get feedback just as any other subcommittee would from this body. Is that fine for folks in terms of process stuff? Okay, great. Well, then I'm moving off the priorities for now, but we can come back to them really at any time. And I will put them on the meeting, you know, just and look at the next 2 months, every, you know, month, we can look at that. But we'll, coming out of this, I will get in touch with you about moving things forward if it was your subcommittee, or getting input from you on like what role you might want to play. So expect to hear from me. The other things that we have to talk about tonight are really the state appeals process. I want to take just a minute on. I think, Lauren, this is something that's coming up in the legislature that we might want to weigh in on. Do you want to cover that?
Sure. So, and others might know more about this than I do, but the legislature right now, most actively in the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee, are looking at really the concept of, you know, and it kind of builds on what Sandy was saying, of how do we reduce the number of issues that people can appeal on and what feel like arbitrary and overly generous ability for people to appeal. And so there's like a bunch of different ideas circulating, but the latest I saw, but it's like a pretty nascent conversation. So who knows how it will evolve or not at the legislature, but it was kind of like coming into a study was like how it started. So maybe we could feed into that. Like I would love for the committee to understand, and like the other committees as it moves through the process, like what are some of like the real world examples? And we have a lot of stories from Montpelier of like how this is playing out and how it's really challenging development in like exactly the types of areas that as a state and as other policies that these same lawmakers are passing are saying like this is exactly the kind of place we want to put development. And like this, like, so I could see us potentially trying to you know, and maybe it's an individual could help lead us on this, or somehow that like we gather a couple stories or encourage some of the developers that we know have had particular issues to at least be weighing into this process and sharing the examples. And if we as a housing committee wanted to say like we are, you know, encouraging you to move this conversation forward because we are seeing this as a barrier as a community, like something like that, just to give some oomph. Like I had been a little hopeful that there maybe they would work on a policy this year, but it seems like there's just not enough like gelled yet for it to move forward. So anyway, I feel like the experience and like the ideas and the examples that we've been talking about as a committee have like could be just useful context, and like the stories are what lawmakers like can like stick their that's like what sticks in their heads of like, okay, what kind of solutions do we want to actually be looking at then? So I feel like it could be valuable, but I don't know exactly what format that would look like. But
like potentially us like packaging up a case study and then giving
it could
it
be
to
us
them and
writing
grading,
something
right?
up, but we had a few conversations with some examples of some developers and putting it on behalf of the Montpelier Housing Committee. I think would be a great way to do it. We could encourage a few people to get on the agenda to testify and share their stories so that they could have more of a conversation with the committee, like the same people that we do if we, so anyway, there's numerous ways we could do it, but I think just the perspective of Montpelier as the kind of place where I think most of the legislators from rather has found we would try to encourage development in these areas. We're still like stifling it inadvertently with some of the policies.
Yeah.
The city still have a lobbyist, because Bev Hill used to do a great job. She doesn't do that anymore. Do we have a lobbyist?
Yes.
Yeah, Carrie? There was part of the budget that was to pay for a lobbyist in the state, correct?
All right, yes, that is correct. We do have a lobbyist.
Do you know who it is?
Gwen somebody. Gwen Zakoff, maybe?
Yeah.
Is her name? She's been doing it for a couple of years at least with us, so.
Lauren is hitting on something that's really, really important. And in the past, Montpelier had a very strong voice, and Beth could connect with people who were actual like policy makers and driving the process at the State House. I don't know Gwen. The lobbyist for AIA Vermont and DVRA that I work with is not tasked with these bills this year. So there are 3 bills in the legislature right now. One of it is anyways, we don't need to go into detail, but the appeal issue would be important for Montpelier's voice. And I think that if we could use case studies, that would really help. And the other one is one that I have been trying to push through. I can only do it as an individual because AIA Vermont is not pushing this. But I'm actually trying to change the definition of minor subdivision so that right now it's very restrictive. But if it could be expanded to include anything that doesn't need a special consideration for wetlands or steep slopes. If it's not limited by the number of lots being created, it would let us subdivide administratively and not require a statutory hearing. And it would save months on development process. So it's just a very simple tweak that needs to happen. And we need a lobbyist to be able to say this. I mean, it would be, right now there's a statute that requires that almost every town has to go through this laborious process that takes 3 to 7 months for a subdivision.
Okay.
So that is a very small change that would have a very big effect on our ordinance.
We don't, we have the statewide appeals revisions and consideration for between now and the end of March to weigh in on the agenda we have for us now, which seems like the right time.
Yeah, they're doing hearings this week.
Oh.
It's moving, so time is of the, it will continue like being worked on through May. So there is time if we miss this initial window, but like the first committee who's working on it and shaping it is going to be deciding in the next couple of weeks. So if we could quickly pull something together, even if we then improved upon it for when it moves over to the next chamber.
Do we have developers that we know right now that we could have case studies? Yeah.
Yeah, Downstreet is still involved in an appeal on the Eaton Street project. We're in environmental court right now for subdivision that the DRB passed, and is being disputed, and we're waiting on a decision right now. But we're about a year behind in development, mostly because of that, and it's incurred a ton of extra costs.
Is this the person like a couple blocks away?
They're on the same block.
Yeah. same block.
And I've heard that that's because they want to challenge the law behind it, right? That it's left, but who knows?
Yeah, it's, you
I mean,
know,
it is
it's hard to
test-based.
say exactly what their
Motive.
true issue is
Right.
versus what they've appealed on.
Yeah.
But yeah, we could speak all day about it.
Okay. Is there, and thank you. And others?
Gate legends.
Yeah.
James Moore.
James Moore, yeah.
James Morton. James was.
Yeah.
It's already written some stuff on it.
Yeah.
Easy
Okay,
enough.
great. Well, this is on, we're on the
Anything.
appeals subcommittee. We are the subcommittee. So,
All right, so yeah, we can try to pull something together, like, and try to just then get
your
feedback
input.
and ideas.
Okay. Tim, did you have one thing on
I'm just
that?
thinking, so is this state review, is it just appeals period and state permits, or is it just the topic of appeals overall?
Appeals more broadly,
Is
so
it?
municipal and state and Act 250 are all in the mix.
And I wasn't clear, the reason why I'm trying to get the definition of minor subdivision expanded is not only to avoid the hearing and appeal process through that, but if it becomes an administrative approval, that appeal process is different from the hearing.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
makes
they
sense.
tie together.
But didn't Montpelier already amend its zoning so that minor subdivisions are administrative?
It's a very, very small subgroup.
Okay, so 2 other things, and then I'd like to wrap.
Sorry. Last October, I sent an email to Representative Mark Mahali, who is one of the people who was working on this, and he said to get back in touch with him about the appeals process. I wrote to him at the time, advocating that appeals for affordable housing have an exorbitant fee attached to them because of the impact that they have on homeless people directly.
Okay.
He thought that was an interesting idea and asked that I return to him now, which I haven't done, but I just found the email, so.
Oh, thank you. Well, something to consider as we're having this conversation.
Yeah, you're writing something up, just is, this issue is in the Senate now, he's in the House, so, and he's working with the chair, who's Ann Watson, who is our former mayor, so like these Montpelier stories should really resonate, so if there's an idea, we could get it into the Senate, just shoot me if either, yeah, if I could be copied on it, then I can make sure that that's also getting to the key
Forward to
senators.
you what.
What you send to
our
Mark.
exchange.
Perfect.
Will you CC me on that too, just for situational awareness on this? Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so two things. One, Ben, what do you have on your mind? How's this stuff landing with you? Do you have anything you want to add, questions, say?
Careful.
Like this particular thing? or-
Anything we talked about the whole night. This is your hold court.
Mm. Well, the last thing that we got built in Montpelier was a couple of years ago. And the homeowners represented themselves with the DRB. And my understanding is that it was a close one. And
Oh, you pulled through.
we did, yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah, that was up on Greenock Avenue, which is up off downhill. It was a lot that sat for a long time.
Yeah.
They bought it and then discovered how much of it was restricted by there's like wetlands, and then there's a wetland buffer, and then there's the setbacks from the street, from the neighboring properties, and so they ended up having to build on what looked like an enormous parcel of land. They got a house that's like a big long sort of raft going out over and stuff. It's a cool house. Yeah, it was great. It was fun project to build.
Okay.
I think had they not had their ducks really in a row in terms of engineering and stuff, they wouldn't have gotten it all.
Okay.
We've had other projects that have gone to the DRB also, but I think they're less relevant for this. One in particular, though, that I would use as a case study was we did a very small project for someone on Charles Street, and Charles Street's super steep.
Yeah, it sure is.
So this homeowner had a house from like the mid 1800s. There's a garage appended onto the uphill side of it, and the uphill side of the garage had a retaining wall that was failing and had been failing, and they had tried to fix it, like the previous owners had tried to fix it. The thing was listing at like a 30-degree angle, and it took us probably a year to get to the point where we could like do a thing about it. And it was basically, the proposal was like to tear off what was there, put back a functioning retaining wall, and then put a roof on top of that. And like, and to have a complete permit application, it was something like $8,000 or $9,000. Because
Wow.
it required a full civil engineering survey plus structural engineering.
Okay. So that's a good example for our local, right?
That's just like small town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that ended up significantly impacting the scope of that project. Right?
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
and I'm sure Tim could give you a better example of what he's going or gone through so far,
Right.
but that's like, we weren't even trying to change the footprint of the building.
Right.
It was just like, this retaining wall is failing and we want to change it. And that was working with like a local structural and civil engineering firm that deals with Montpelier all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like what you're keeping in mind as you're looking at these regs. Yeah. Thank you for that example. Okay. Two other things that I'm thinking about. One is that the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission is coming with their final housing assessment at our next meeting, and our next meeting is on March 3rd. Between now and then, I'll be in touch with you on like this. I'll send the updated list. I'll send the thing that's happening, the educational thing for small developers and homeowners on the 21st of February around, and we'll look to feed out the February and March stuff to the right homes. Should you want to take those on, and we can have that conversation. We don't need to do that retail style here right now. So I'll just follow up with you. Besides that, thanks so much, everyone. I feel like this was really productive. I really appreciated all your input and your work, and more to come. So I'll see you on the 3rd of March. Unless you're seeing me tomorrow morning at 8:30. Thank you. All right.